Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. Today we are continuing our series of live streams looking at the mysteries in Westeros, the mysteries in the world of ice and fire. And I thought we would look at Hardhome, which if you've obviously seen the TV show, you will remember as one of the more epic episodes, battles that there is there at the end of, I think, season 5. And but in the books, there's a whole lot more going on. We haven't quite reached that point in the books yet, but there is a huge mystery going back in history that defies, I think, any one single very clear and obvious explanation. But we've got a lot of possibilities that we're going to be working our way through today. So, as always, what I shall do is I'll give my little introduction, set out the scene, and then we'll work our way through the questions I've got from my patrons and try and pick up as much as I can from the chat as we go through. So, let's start by just saying Hardhome, where is it? It's north of the wall on the east coast. There's a sort of a promontory that goes up. It's right at the end of that. So, this was probably the closest that the wildlings, the free folk, ever got to a proper town or city. They had settlements. They've had, there's a few villages, some temporary large gatherings of people, like when Mance Raider was gathering everybody together. But in terms of a settled, large community, this is probably the closest thing they got. And we don't know how long it was there. The sort of the deeper history is something which is not just lost to the mystery. We're just not told anything about it. What we're told is that it, as a place, it actually was quite well situated. It had this natural, as I say, it was on the coast. It had this kind of natural deep water harbour, so ships, ocean-going ships, could come right in, and it was sheltered by these cliffs that had a whole load of caves in them, and fish was plentiful, wood was plentiful, all the raw materials, all the food you might need for a large group of people, that was all available there. So it's a sensible place for a settlement to be growing up. And we get some information about this there was a book. Maester Willis wrote a book about this. We'll talk about him a little bit more later, perhaps. And that's where most of the information that south of the wall has about Hardhome. But the main thing that we know about Hardhome is something happened 600-ish years ago. And when I say something happened, a tragedy, a calamity, something huge happened. We don't get any direct reports from there. What we do have are reports from the Night's Watch, who were on top of the wall at the time. And they saw during the night, suddenly, this huge fire so bright that they thought that the sun was rising in the north. And it soon transpires that that was Hardhome. Some traders happen to be passing by there. They check in. The Night's Watch Rangers go and have a look to see what's happening. And the messages that we get back are tragic. The place is burned to the ground. The remains of buildings and of bodies are there, burned to a crisp. There are bloated bodies in the water. The whole area, the ground is all charred. For the next 6 months or so, ash rains down lightly over the area. And perhaps most spookily of all, we get the cliffside had all of these caves. It was pockmarked with caves. When people arrived there, they could hear screams and shrieks still emitting from those caves. Needless to say, it was avoided for a very long time. The free folk, the wildlings, declared it a cursed place, and they did not go back there. And it was abandoned for a very long time. That's until the story we have now. it starts to become more of an issue again. After Mansraid has gathered all of the wildlings, if you remember, he gathered all of the wild, or as many as he could, all together, and took them down south to the wall. They reached the wall en masse, and then we have the battle under the wall, where they relentlessly try to take it. They try to climb over it. They send giants to try and get their way through the tunnel. They do try shooting arrows up. That's not particularly effective, but they have John at the top, and also they've sent a party around the other side to be attacking Castle Black from the other side while all this is going on. And John is genuinely concerned that although they've got this massive ice wall that should normally be able to stop anything, there are just so many of these wildlings that eventually they will get through. But the day is saved by Stannis. Stannis arrives with his army, and they just charge into the wildlings, and the wildlings scatter. Now, we often kind of think about what happens next. The wildlings, they get welcomed through the wall. They do. A certain number of them come through, and there's a lot of debate about what's to happen with them. But we're more interested in the wildlings who didn't come through. Because some sort of hung around for a bit and got welcomed in. Some of them sort of headed off on their own. There are other ways to get past the wall. If there's only a few of you, then maybe you could head to Eastwatch, get a little boat around. Maybe you could go all the way to the west. There's the gorge, it's called. It's quite a treacherous route, but you can try going through like that. So a few kind of headed out on their own. But a new leader emerged called Mother Mole. And Mother Mole claimed she had a vision of Hardhome. And the vision was that where there, let's see if I can get the words right, there would be salvation where once there had been damnation. And she had this vision of ships coming and rescuing the free folk from Hardhome. And so she went off with a sizable group. We don't know exactly how many, but a large number of the wildlings followed her east to the coast to Hardhome. Now, John's obviously a bit concerned about this because he knows what's coming. The others are on their way. The army of the dead is on its way. And he decides what he's going to do is he's going to send a rescue mission up there. He sends Cotter Pike. Cotter Pike is the person in charge of Eastwatch, who doesn't particularly like wildlings, but does what he's told. He's a very loyal member of the Night's Watch. He gets 11 ships together, scrambles them together, and heads north to Hardhome. Unfortunately, they get caught. There's a big storm, and he loses 5 of the ships. Some of them get blown off course, some of them run aground. But he arrives there with 6 ships, and then he sends back a letter. So he's taken his maester with him. Cotter Pike is illiterate, and so every time he's communicating, it's not actually him. He's got his maester is coming with him and doing all the writing for him, and he sends back this note by Raven to John that basically says things are terrible. We'll get into the exact text, but it says things are really bad here. He says there are dead things in the woods, there are dead things in the water. John decides he's going to send help. And he decides he's going to lead a ranging himself. He's going to head north, head up to Hardhome, and rescue as many of these wildlings as he possibly can. Cotter Pike has said, "Don't come by the water. The water is treacherous at the moment. That way, you can't come that way. So we have to escape overland." So John's about to do that. Then comes the pink letter, and he gets angry and decides, you know what? Actually, I'm going down to Winterfell. And he says, Tormund, you lead a group. Instead of me, you lead the ranging, head up north, go get the wildlings. And then obviously we get the end of the Winds of Winter and John is killed. So that's where we leave things with Hardhome. There is one more sort of angle we have to this, because obviously the TV show, we know what happened. John did go up himself. He headed up there. He tried to rescue some wildlings, and then he came into the army of the dead. The others, he had this standoff against the Night King. Looked really cool. That does make us wonder. We shouldn't read too much into the TV show to find pointers for the books, but it does make us wonder whether or not, in combination with what we've heard from Cotter Pike about these dead things in the woods, dead things in the water, that maybe the others are going to come and attack Hardhome. It would make sense. They are slowly working their way south, as far as we can tell. They're taking out the humans wherever they can. It would make sense for them to do that. So, in that context, we also have Melisandre getting a vision in the flames, which is this. Snowflakes swirled from a dark sky, and ashes rose to meet them, the grey and the white whirling around each other as flaming arrows arced above a wooden wall, and dead things shambled silent through the cold beneath the great grey cliff where fires burned inside 100 caves. Then the wind rose, and the white mist came sweeping in, impossibly cold, and one by one the fires went out. Afterward, only the skulls remained. So that's Melisandre's vision. And it seems to be that, yes, the others are going to descend on Hardhome. And there will, from what she says, only the skulls remain. Skulls, obviously, in her visions, that means death. Only death remains. Not many people are going to be surviving this. So that's where we're at in the books. We've got two large areas to be focusing on. I think we've got the what happened 600 years ago, and also what is happening / will happen there in the books at the moment. Okay, so let's quickly looking in the chat. We actually had two new members, Harshmallow79 and Kimberla Faye. Welcome to you both. Thank you. I hugely appreciate that. For the best way to support this channel, if you wish to do so, and thank you if you do, is still Patreon. But if for whatever reason you don't wish to use Patreon, then becoming a channel member here is fantastic as well. So thank you very much for that. I hugely appreciate it. That does mean that your names do get sort of highlighted a little bit more. So, for example, Kimberly Fay saying, thank you, Robert. Hello. Hello back to you. So the better chance of picking out your name as the chat flashes through quite quickly while I'm talking, so I can't obviously see absolutely everything going through. Right, so let's go to pick up some questions from my patrons. Lady Vaughan-Strauss saying, greetings, Robert, and a happy Samhain. I think I never know 100% how to pronounce it. To you and Dan, do you think that the terrible fire which happened centuries ago was an attempt to thwart an attack by the Whites and the others, or is there a more barbarically human answer to the tragedy? Thank you. So, I will go through the course of this video. There's a lot of fan theories here about what might have happened, and I will try and work my way through. I've got questions which sort of pick up on most of the main ones, I think. So I'll go through and try and pick up those one by one. You're asking whether this was an attempt to thwart an attack by the Whites and others. Well, yeah, I mean, fire clearly is probably quite a good way to try and do that. But I think the evidence suggests not, for the simple reason, well, for a couple of simple reasons. First of all, it's not just like they got some fire and sort of like built sort of a whole load of fire to try and push them back. This was an explosion, as far as we can tell. This was massive. It could be seen from the wall. This is hundreds of miles away. And it left everything completely just burned to a crisp. So this feels a bit more than just defending themselves against the others. Maybe this was a trap, you say. If so, well, you say, one may say, if so, then I think that it clearly didn't work very well because it killed a whole load of humans. And also, there were dead bodies left over afterwards in the water, which, if it were the others, and if any others had survived, then they would have raised them. But I think the bigger point for me is that at that time, there's no real mention of the others being around. So the big story, the high-level story here, obviously, with the others, is that they've been gone for millennia. No sign of them. And if they had appeared in enough force to demand such a drastic action as to be destroying an entire city, you would have thought that some word would have got out. So I think, although I wouldn't say definitely no, to me that doesn't seem to answer all of the possible clues that we have going on there, and also doesn't explain the shrieks and cries from the caves. So that, I think, you'll find is probably going to be quite a similar answer I give to a lot of these. Is that a lot of these, yeah, they make sense and they answer quite a few of the clues that we have, but they don't answer everything. Perhaps there is out there somewhere an explanation that does pick together absolutely everything. I personally haven't yet come across that. That nothing quite works for me. So I think this is a mystery. I think this is a genuine mystery. I don't think George R. R. Martin has written enough yet to allow us to come to a full and firm view on it. Okay, let's go to Bear Island, saying, "Hello, Robert. I hope you and Dan are well." We are, thank you. Arya has already learned that a slave ship from north of the wall was impounded by the Bravosi. Do you think the Bravosi have a soft spot for the wildlings, given they are sometimes raided by slave ships? Is the name Hardhome known in Essos because of the previous disaster, or otherwise? Lastly, I'm sure it's a long shot to have any effect on the current story, given all that's going on in Marine, but is there any chance of a mention getting back to the POV characters there? Something like Tyrion overhears overconfident slavers boasting about heading to another mess at Hardhome once they retake the city. Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks to the mods and to you for all you do. Well, thank you. And also, let's do a quick shout out to the moderators. Moderators, you're amazing. Thank you so much for all that you do. If you are here watching live in the chat, please can you give the moderators a little bit of love, because they deserve every bit that they get. Okay, let's do some sort of pick over these. So first of all, the Arya thing. Yeah. So if you cast your mind to when Arya is in Bravos, she's training with the Faceless Men. There comes a time, I think she's cat of the canals at the time. And her mission is to, every time she comes back to the House of Black and White, to have 3 secrets. She should have learned 3 secrets. So the idea is that she goes out, she listens into conversations, she learns things, and then she brings that information back. And this seems to, as far as we can tell, serve a dual purpose as far as the Faceless Men are concerned. Firstly, it trains Arya to be paying more attention, to be listening to things, to learn stuff, but also it tells them what's going on out in the city. Things that people are whispering and talking about that they perhaps don't even think about. Oh, there's that girl selling the cockles and the mussels. I shouldn't say this in front of her. So this works quite well for them on both counts. But one of the things that she recounts back is this conversation that she hears when she hears about the fact that the Bravosi have captured and impounded a slaver ship, which had just come from Hardhome. And the story seems to be that this slaver ship was sort of heading up, just going around trying to find some slaves and take them back. There's a slave crisis. The bigger issue here. There's a slave crisis going on. We shouldn't have too much sympathy, but the slave trade has been disrupted. Dany has been burning down slaver cities, has been outlawing slavery. And so this has caused huge issues, is that that's where the slave markets are. And so if you and there's now a naval blockade over Slavers Bay with Marine, which means that nothing can come out. So if you want a slave, where do you go? So the slave ships are now heading off in different directions, and one of them seems to have headed up towards Hardhome. And what they discovered there is a huge amount of wildlings who are desperate to leave. And so they seem to have managed to coax aboard, I think it's some women and children, and only when they sort of set off do they clap them in chains. But anyway, the Bravosi hate slavery, and they capture this ship and bring it back to Bravos. So that's what's going on there. Do the Bravosi have a soft spot for the wildlings? I don't think necessarily a soft spot for them, but they are completely anti-slavery to an extent that there's lots of characters in this story who are against slavery. The Bravosi are one of the very few who are proactively anti-slavery. They actively go out there and try and stop the slave trade and things like that. So they're actually walking the talk, so to speak. Is the name Hardhome known in Essos? Well, to a degree, yes. Is what has happened in the past known to a degree? And I think the degree is that the well-read, the nobility, they will have heard of this. This is a mystery for everyone. It's a mystery for us, but it's a mystery for everyone out there. This is a thing that they will have heard about. Old Nan told Arya stories about this, and so the stories are out there, not just in Westeros, in Essos as well. When Arya talks about Hardhome, it's not just like, oh yeah, there's this place north of the wall called. No, the understanding is, yeah, they understand what Hardhome is. And also, secondly, this is a naval city. This is how you don't go overland to Bravos. If you're going in or out of Bravos, you're going by ship. So this is everybody takes a ship everywhere. And although it's not very close to Hardhome, it is about as close as anywhere in Essos gets. So yeah, it will have been heard of. People won't know huge amounts about it. Probably legends of the tragedy have reached there, but that's about all. As for Meereen, might rumors of what happened or rumors of the what's going on there reach Meereen? I mean, I think there's two layers to this. The short answer is probably not. And the first part is that what's happened at Meereen at the moment is probably not that interesting. We haven't heard any rumors really of the White Walkers, other than the Red Priests, obviously preaching their apocalyptic stuff. We've not really heard of the nobility in Essos going, oh, I'm really concerned the others are back. That's just not a topic of conversation. So that has not reached them. So as far as they're concerned, what is the news? There's a few wildlings have repopulated an old city. There's not huge amounts there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, as I already mentioned, there's a naval blockade going on outside Meereen, outside Slaver's Base. So information in and out is kind of slow. And the third thing is that it's a very long way away and communication is not easy over those long distances. By way of sort of a comparison, when we are at the start, effectively the start of A Dance with Dragons, we start getting rumours of dragons in Westeros, in Old Town. A little bit before that, we hear, there are rumours that there might be dragons in the small council. But in terms of the general populace hearing these kinds of things, it takes probably year and a half, 2 years for that information to come across on ships that have been sailing from the Far East all the way across. And so if it takes that long to be getting the information from Karth and Meereen all the way over to Old Town, it will take just as, if not longer, for information to get from Hardhome all the way down to Meereen. So I think the answer is not yet. That doesn't mean it won't. If big things start happening, then yes, the information does spread. And this is, I think, one of the things George R. Martin does really well, actually, in his world building, is that the rumors spreading. You do hear about things; they're not always 100% accurate. I happen to be reading. I'm working my way through Dance with Dragons at the moment. There's I'm probably about a third of the way through, I would say. You get a few chapters where you get Tyrion, who's around the bottom end of the River Roine near Volantis Selhoris, and you get um, Quentin, who is trying to work his way up towards Meereen, and they are hearing rumors about what Dany's up to, and some of it is true, but some of it is not true, and so that's the way that information did travel, is that as well as the information that she's taken Meereen and she stayed there and she seems to be deciding to rule that now, which is absolutely accurate. But there's also she's feeding her enemies to her dragons, which is not accurate. But you can see where that story might have come from. The dragons do apparently sometimes kill children, out shepherds, whatever. So you can see where the rumors might have come from. So it's not 100% truthful. So I think there's quite a few reasons why I say if and when the information does reach somewhere like Meereen, it's not necessarily going to be the exact truth of what it is. Right. Let's have a look. I think I had a couple of questions in the chat. Henry Cavill in the chat. Good to see you with the super sticker. Thank you very much. Very kind. Gideon saying maybe it was rival magical wildling families who kept one-upping each other until someone hit the nuclear option and summoned uncontrollable shadow demons. It's possible. I mean, this is the kind of thing where you go, yes, I can't argue against that. I don't think we've got any particular evidence that that's the case, that there were any rival magical wildling families, but yeah, perhaps that's what happened. It. I mean, I think the thing that kind of, whether it's that exactly or something else along those lines, what they have in their favor is the fact that this came out of the blue. Nobody knew about it. It wasn't that there was something that we'd heard that Hardhome had declared war on somewhere else, and it was like, oh, okay, well, maybe it was their enemies. There's nothing. There was no news before that. There was nothing that anyone could think, well, who would have done this? Which gives the impression that maybe this was an accident of some kind. I think we can probably rule out the kind of the volcanic explosion. This doesn't feel like, yes, we've got the ash in the air, but there's no huge crater on the ground, and no indication that it's on any kind of volcanic activity. So that seems to not be the case, but magical a magical dispute between people there, why not? Roman Lakovets, do you think that there might be other towns like Hardhome elsewhere beyond the wall? Well, we're told not. It doesn't mean that there's no other settlements. Now, the question is, what do you mean by a settlement? You get Whitetree, for example, is described as, and I think it's 4 buildings around the Heart Tree, the Weirwood, and you get clans who seem to be together. It would not surprise me if there are other things that we might loosely call a town. Certainly, there will be things that we would call villages, but as far as we can tell, what made Hardhome unique was that this was getting beyond being just like a a village or a town. This was like potentially growing to be city size. This was actually getting to be quite big. People were going there because it was a place, not just like they happened to be born there. This was a draw in and of itself. And I think I had one more. Jewel Elson, thank you so much, with a super sticker as well. Okay, let's go to a question from where are we up to? Aussie Greg saying, "G'day, Robert and Dan. G'day to you too. It's a shame that Hardhome was destroyed. Allegedly, it was a decent-sized trading hub. Without the fire, maybe it would have become a northern unifier, larger, wealthier, and more connected with the world. It makes me wonder that if that were the case, could relations between it and the South be less hostile? Would knowledge of giants, the children of the forest, and perhaps even knowledge of the others themselves be more well known down south?" Well, I think this is a really interesting what if, because we don't know, but yes, this is how um, good relations develop. Is so often with trade in our world, is that when you start getting good trading relations, then it's quite, you start becoming more reliant on each other, and then you start, stop viewing somebody potentially as your enemy and actually start seeing them as potentially your ally or your business partner. And then perhaps you will visit that place more, and you'll see it, and you'll meet the people, and you'll find out that they're not perhaps quite as strange as you thought they were. So the barriers can slowly come down. And yeah, I see no reason why, if it had survived another 600 years, why it couldn't have helped to sort of break down a few barriers of misunderstanding. Now, it would always, I suspect, be viewed as even if it grew to be like a proper established city, it would always be viewed as a wildling city, in the same way that a lot of the places over in Essos are viewed as being, completely not understandable. Like the Dothraki, it's a completely different culture. We simply don't understand them. They are savages. So there's a huge. It's not a slam dunk. It's not obvious that this is going to help, but it probably wouldn't do any harm. As for whether it would help information about the others or the children of the forest or whatever heads south, probably less so, because that's still, if you just hear stories about what happens north of the wall is still a huge physical barrier. So even if you're just hearing stories, and in Hardhome, they told me that there's children of the forest still living over there. Well, whatever. I mean, of course they'll believe that. They're wealthy. So I suspect probably not. What we may have lost is the kind of accumulated knowledge that a maester would be able to gather. So we had that one maester, Maester Willis, who went up there. He stayed there for, I think it was 3 years, and he wrote a learned tome about the wildlings. If this had survived for longer, then other maesters would probably have gone up and would have learned more things. And so they would have been a whole lot less of a mystery. Certainly, you could imagine that the library at Castle Black would have had a few tomes with a bit more information about the wildlings, and so their customs would not be such a mystery to the Night's Watchman. And so that level of detail, I think we're probably missing out on. Shantanu David has gifted 5 IDG live memberships. Thank you. That's incredibly kind of you. Thank you very much. So yeah, this is a way to support. If you would love to support the channel, I hugely appreciate it. I'll use this as an opportunity to actually say thank you to anyone who does support this channel in a number of different ways. If you're a patron, if you're a channel member here, if you buy the merch, there's probably a link down there. I try to make sure there's a link down there. Always forget to talk about merch, but I have got exciting merch news coming in the next few weeks. I think you'll like it. And I'm sure there are other ways you can support this channel, but if you do, thank you. I hugely appreciate it. I cannot carry on doing this without your support, so I appreciate it hugely. And giving away free memberships is an incredibly generous thing to do. Willie Biggs 2000. How far south do you predict the Army of the Dead will go? Well, I mean, I think that's probably a live stream on its own, isn't it? My instinct is that they will get to a a plot important place. Let's put it that way. So there are, I think, 4 obvious possible places where they could stop. The first is the wall. I don't think they'll be stopped at the wall. I think they'll get past the wall. The second is Winterfell. They might be stopped at Winterfell, but that still doesn't feel like this massive threat to the south. It will feel that people in the south probably won't even hear about it. It's so far north. Remember how long it took Robert Baratheon and co just to get up to Winterfell. So that doesn't feel like the entirety of Westeros is being overtaken by the Army of the Dead. So I think they'll probably get further south. Then I think you've got the Neck is the next obvious place that they could perhaps be stopped, because unless they're going through the marshland, then they have to go across this one causeway, which is I mean, you can already imagine the kind of the visuals of like this Army of the Dead just having to march in this not quite single file, but just like only a few abreast down this causeway. Oh, the other one, which I haven't got a fully worked up theory on this. I've got a lot of thoughts and ideas, but the Isle of Faces is the other pretty obvious place that they might be either heading or might be stopped at. So I think they're going to get further south than they did on the TV show. Let's put it that way. James Townley, thank you very much, saying fan theory. It was a magical dispute between the Grumpkins and the Snarks. Like it. In all seriousness, I love that George R. R. Martin leaves these mysteries in the story and doesn't give us all the answers. Much love for you and Dan the dog. Well, thank you very much for that. Yeah, I mean, this is what I'll say. I mean, I might have got a patron question along these lines, but I will say this here and now. I think that George R. Martin, I don't think George R. R. Martin threw this in just to be, oh, let's have a random mystery over there. I suspect in his mind there is a vague idea about what happened. But it doesn't, and when I say a vague idea, he may well have it completely mapped out. But he hasn't given us all of the bits of information yet for us to be able to fully come up with the solution about what happened, or even if it's relevant. That I think is the thing that makes this world seem so big, is that we're looking instinctively, we're looking at answers that might tie this into the main story. Which, as I say, instinctively, it's completely understandable, of course. But the thing which makes this world so big is the fact that we know in the back of our minds this could be something completely unrelated to the main story, because this is a huge, detailed world. And Hardhome as a place, we've got so little information about it, how the society was structured. We've got like a brief snapshot that there were 4, I can't remember what they're called, warlords or something, when that Maester Willis was up there. There were 4 who jointly ruled. So that seemed to be how it was ruled at that point in time. But whether that was always the case, it seems probably not. So we know so little about it, which means that we can't possibly come up with a firm answer to say this is definitely what happened. And that is what makes this world so much bigger, because we have this idea that it might be something completely separate, unrelated to the main story. So yeah, it's interesting. Okay, let's go to a question from Ranabe Mitra, saying, salutations, and to you too. What is the narrative purpose of Hardhome in the remaining bits of the story? For me, it serves as a plot device to take Tormund away from the wall for legitimate reasons, and only for them to later come back with a larger army of wildlings. possibly supplemented by Cotter Pike and his crew at Eastwatch, and maybe introduce another magical element in Mother Mole. What do you think? How do you see the Hardhome plot affecting the current situation at the Wall? Well, I think you're right about the first part. There's I think every chance Tormund will head north, and he will probably bring a few people down with him. We will get more wildlings at the Wall who have some kind of first-hand experience of the others. I think that's sort of adding to what our understanding of what's going on. But I think the bigger issue here is that this will be, and it's quite hard to put our brains back, having watched the TV show, to put our brains back to where we're at vis-a-vis the others in the books. They've been almost entirely off page. We get the prologue, we get sort of a few mutterings of them here and there, we get the Craster's Keep, etc. But the only time we really kind of see them is the confrontation we get at Fist of the First Men, and then following after that with Sam and Gilly. Other than that, they've been talked about way more than actually seen. They're still a mystery. They're out there somewhere, but we don't know where they are, what they're doing, why. This will be the time when it turns from they're this sort of threat up there somewhere to they're trying to wipe out all humanity. That's the feeling that people are going to start getting. And because if they take out Hardhome, that is taking out, we don't know how many, there are thousands probably, of wildlings in one fell swoop. And that will feel like a sea change from people who've they've been on the edges of the action. Suddenly, this is very real and actually quite near. You can get to Hardhome. It is a little way north of the Wall, but it's not way off in the lands of Always Winter. So that, I think, is this kind of like shot in the arm, this reality check that we will not very probably get via John, because he's dead now. If George R. R. Martin did want to, then I'm sure he could find a way around it. They waited to go until he came back, or he walked into Ghost and Ghost insisted him coming with it. Whatever he could do, but probably we won't hear about it through John. We will just get it through accounts from people like Tormund coming back, or maybe Melisandre will see it, what happens in the flames. Maybe Bran might see it. So we will get these images of that, and this will just hurry things along, because the others have they have been moving relatively slowly, but suddenly it's like, wow, now this feels like a clear and present danger. And at the Wall right now, they're not ready. The North is not ready. The South is definitely not ready. And so they just need to hurry things along. So you have to just ask, well, who's going to care about this most at the Wall? Well, Melisandre is probably going to be at the forefront. If she suddenly thinks this is it, we're here just hanging around, Stannis has decided he has to go and claim Winterfell. In order to do that, he had to take the long way round, and now he's stuck in the snow. If she thinks this is taking too long, I need my Azor Ahai back, that's the kind of thing which will make her want to clear the way for Stannis to come back, which could lead to a chain of events where she then is insistent that she needs to be able to change the weather, because Stannis is snowed in. At the moment, he cannot move. His army cannot go any further. He cannot do. Not only can he not attack Winterfell, but he therefore cannot, from there, go on to do the Azor Ahai thing on the Wall. He is stuck and gone. And if Melisandre thinks we can't hang around waiting, we have to do something, I need to cast the powerful magic. And if, in order to cast the powerful magic, she needs King's blood, then we know what she's going to be wanting to do. So that's I think the big narrative role is, although we won't see it direct as POV, we will hear about it, and that news will impact on people, and those people will start to hurry things along. Right. John Merkel saying the North has many secrets, i.e., the origin of Stark magic, etc. Part of me wonders if the collective memory at Hardhome began to know too much. Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So if the collective memory at Hardhome, if by that what you mean is that the people, the wildlings are disparate and they're apart, and they mostly don't come into contact with each other at all. We've got a village over here, some people wandering over there. Most people leave those guys over there alone. Yeah, that's the kind of idea. If you have a city, then everybody comes together and they can start sharing knowledge and information. And maybe collectively they did start to know too much. The question then is, who thinks that and who's trying to stop them? If the knowing too much is they know so much that they might be able to prevent the others from coming, do we think this is the others? Personally, that doesn't feel like their modus operandi. It's they're ice creatures. They're not fire creatures. They don't burn things down. They're ice. So I like the thinking. I do like the thinking. I don't know who that means might do it, because that seems like a mighty big response. John Merkel, the answer is always Bloodraven. Absolutely. Well, I'll come on to Bloodraven actually in a moment. There is one way I think Bloodraven comes, not into that explosion, but a bit later. So let's go to a question from Alhad. Do you have any headcanon theories about Mother Mole? Have you given any thought as to whether she might be having green dreams or a lesser version of the same? Also, what exactly are her visions? I know we don't have any direct information in the dance, but still. Okay, so Mother Mole, to remind you, she is this leader who has taken a whole load of the wildlings over to Hardhome. And it's with the where once there was damnation, there's now going to be salvation line, basically. And also, she's had visions of ships arriving to help take people away, rescue them. So that's all we know. Now, about her personally, there are some, I think, quite telling details that we get just dropped in, which is, first of all, she's known as a woods witch. Secondly, her name is Mother Mole, and we know what moles are like. They live underground. Thirdly, that she lives in a burrow in a hollow hill. Who lives in hollow hills? Well, the children of the forest used to. So every bit of information we have about her suggests that yes, she's getting some kind of green dreams or something along those lines. She may even be either a child of the forest or related to a child of the forest. The woods witch, don't forget, we get these kind of phrasings, words used to describe some people that we get. Woods witch, Cersei talks about the woods witch, Maggie the Frog as a woods witch. We also get references to the ghost of High Heart when she was friends earlier, when she was friends with Jenny Volstones as a woods witch. And her description, about 3 feet tall, white hair, red eyes, makes you wonder whether she was perhaps related to the children of the forest in some way. So there's there's, I think, more than a hint she might be part Children of the Forest, or at the very least having some green sight. This, I said I'd get onto this. This does make you wonder whether she is perhaps being directed in this in some way. And this is where the when in doubt Bloodraven thing comes in, because you say, well, who would possibly be doing that? Perhaps Bloodraven. And you have to ask the question, why on earth would Bloodraven send them there? A true vision of some ships coming to save them? Yes, absolutely. Is Bloodraven really genuinely trying to save them? He surely doesn't think there's going to be a mass evacuation of everybody from there. Is he actually moving them to a place where the massacre could happen? It's a horrible thought. Bloodraven is quite a dark character. Do not forget. We often think of him as being a lot more cuddly than he is, because he's there, he's on the side of John, he's training up Bran, but he's a really dark character. He's willing to do some really dark things in order to get the end result that he wants. And if the end result that he wants is humanity ready to face the others when the others reach the wall, then perhaps what he thinks is they need is this kind of jolt in the arm, like we were talking about a bit earlier. What is the impact of this likely to be on the people at the wall? It's likely to make them go, whoa, we need to move quickly. We need to do something now. So if that is what he thinks might happen, then maybe. It's quite a dark thought, but why not? Debbie Bailey, just saying 5 on the super chat. Didn't quite get that. Maybe if there was a question there, do let me know. And Shantanu David saying, is Hardhome warning or a promise? Perhaps John 2.0 leads the wildlings there afterwards. Perhaps thermal vents, a natural harbour, many fish. Hard but a home. Yeah, so hard but a home, absolutely. Yeah, that's I mean, George R. R. Martin loves his wordplay, so it is a hard home. That absolutely makes sense. Thermal vents, we don't read of any. That doesn't mean that there aren't any, but we don't read of any. And as I say, what we read about what was left over was kind of like charred rubble, rather than an explosion from beneath. So it's quite hard, given the limited evidence we have. It's quite hard to sort of rule things in or things out. But from what we've heard, it doesn't seem to have been something happening underground that kind of caused an explosion. It was something that came from above ground and torched everything and did it to such a high heat that it caused great burning. Um, might John 2.0 lead to the wildlings there? My instinct is in the books he's not going to. I think, yes, he did on the show, but I think in the books he's not going to. He was going to, but then he got the pink letter, which made him want to go to Winterfell. And I think when he returns, he will also still want to go to Winterfell. And frankly, we don't know how long he's going to be out for. So it may well be that Tormund has already set off by that point. So he doesn't really need to go there, and he will have other priorities. I think he probably won't. So yeah, I hope that one answers that bit. And let's go to Alhad saying, off topic. I agree, but sort of connected. I agree with you that Bloodraven is secretly guiding Jon. From Bran's dream in Game of Thrones, we know that green seers can look beyond just the periphery set by the weirwoods. Hence, I find it difficult to believe that Bloodraven has no clue about Daenerys. What do you think? Well, yes, so this is about the nature of sort of the weirwood dreams, visions. They're more almost like weirwood true seeings. Is probably a better way of saying it. You're actually literally seeing out through the weirwood, and as Bloodraven tells Bran, in time he will learn to go out beyond the weirwoods. So if that's the case, surely they can see what's going on over in Essos. Well, the answer I think is probably not. Now, we don't know of anyone with seeing through the Weirwood network, seeing things over in Essos. Certainly, Bloodraven doesn't ever sort of mention being able to see anyone in Essos. And the working theory is that the Weirwood network is all connected underground. And this is what it is. So it's not just the Weirwood network being a Weirwood tree above ground, it's the Weirwood tree is below ground as well. The root systems have spread across everywhere. This is why, for example, there are no Weirwood trees just on the top of big mountains. Like when they tried to plant one on the top of the Erie, they couldn't because it was solid stone all the way up. The root system could not go up and could not link up with the main Weirwood network. Similarly, Dawn, no Weirwood trees, very rocky, big mountainous region, etc. So the working theory is that when Westeros and Essos were sundered one from another with the Hammer of the Waters, the children cast the Hammer of the Waters, cutting off the two continents from one another. That broke the connection with any Weirwood trees that were over in Essos. And I would highly recommend you follow this rabbit hole. I always recommend Amanda Distributed Lands videos on this subject. But if you look at the shade of the evening trees, the imagery that they give off and what the descriptions we have of them and the effects of them, very much kind of like a dark version of Weirwood trees. So the suggestion is that perhaps when we had the sundering of the two continents, the Weirwood trees over in Essos got cut off from the heart of the Weirwood network, and that's when they turned black and dark and shade of the evening. And that is why we never get any information through the Weirwood network from what's going on in Essos, because Bloodraven appears completely oblivious to what's happening with Dany, completely oblivious to Quaithe. So it's fair to say we haven't had all of that bit of lore spelt out for us yet, but all of the hints are that. Shantanu David saying, I meant after the story ends, after the Whites are gone, a Hardhome after the long winter. Yeah, that makes sense. A Hardhome, Jon could lead the wildlings north and set up a home in Hardhome. I mean, that might be where they end up. My general feel is that we're not going to follow Jon very far. I think we'll see him head out north of the wall, and a bit like, actually, this was one of the bits I thought worked quite well with the TV show ending. They just had him going north of the wall, and then we left him. He's heading off there with the wildlings, and I think they went and just showed like a plant was just starting to peek through the snow or something like that. Just a little symbol of hope. So I don't think we're going to get a whole detailed history of what happens to Jon Snow after that. We'll just be given the image of him, like Frodo, heading off west. He's going to be heading off north. Catherine Furseth saying, Hi, Robert. Hardhome is one of those deliciously haunted and scary places that are scary simply because we know so little about them. For example, does the book about Hardhome by Maester Willis, Hardhome, an account of 3 years spent beyond the wall. Thank you. This is the title, by the way. Hardhome, an account of 3 years spent beyond the wall among savages, raiders, and woods witches. Does it still exist? Has Sam read it? In the TV series, Hardhome functioned as a kind of precursor to the big reckoning with the others, the place and time when the full realization of just how powerful and deadly they are, giving men a rather hopeless feeling of how can we ever defeat this threat. If this is the narrative purpose in the books as well, how will this play out? Jon doesn't seem to be going there, so will we only get second-hand accounts? Will anyone survive? And what will Jon and the readers learn from this? Well, yes, it will serve that purpose, I think. As for the book, we're not told where that is, and I suspect it will be down in the Citadel. but Sam will have only read it probably if it's up in Castle Black somewhere. We're not told that he did, but he does a lot of reading. So, what about the will anyone survive bit? I think I've already covered how will we learn about this, but will anyone survive? I think probably some. And I like the idea of us just getting these little tidbits there. One of the things that Cotter Pike's message said is that he'd only got 5 ravens left. So we're only going to get bits of information. It's got the same feel as when the Great Ranging went north and Sam was there with the ravens, and it's like we have to take these because this is how we're communicating back. And it's like, how many ravens have we got still? So they've only got 5 up in Hardhome. You could certainly imagine if the others start coming, Cotter Pike scribbling. Well, so he's not actually scribbling. He's illiterate. He's got the maester with him. The maester scribbling down a few scary short details about what it is. When you read it, I've got the text somewhere. I think actually answering the next question, but it's done in. It's written in this really kind of staccato style, just like a short sentence, bit of fact, another bit of fact, and that, if anything, because it's not telling us the whole, it's just giving us the bare facts. That's allowing. It's a classic kind of horror. George R. Martin loves his horror. It's a classic kind of horror technique. You don't give all of the information. You let our imaginations fill in the rest. Simply saying, there are dead things in the woods, dead things in the water. We don't know exactly what that means, but our minds have started to imagine possibilities of what it is. Will anyone survive? Yeah, I think probably a few will make it out. There will probably be a few by boat, is my best guess. We've got the issue is that at Hardhome, if you imagine it, the promontory goes sort of to the north like that, and Hardhome's at the top. So if the army of the dead is kind of like coming up this way, you're not getting out over land. You either try and go through the army of the dead, or you get on a boat and sail away. So I think instinctively the people who get out are going to be the people who escape by boat. Now, 11 set off, only 6 made it there. Cotter Pike basically says it's stupid to try and come here by boat. But if you're faced with the others or possibility of some quite stormy weather, you'd go with the possibility of quite some stormy weather. So I think probably one of the boats will survive. Maybe Cotter Pike himself will get out. Let's go to a question from GTM. Hello, Robert. Wishing you a lovely. Actually, it's just James Townley I saw in the chat just saying they are coming, which I don't know what the whole discussion was there, but yes, that's exactly the feel. If you're thinking in Moria, when the Gandalf of the Fellowship, they find that book, which is like drums in the deep. They are coming. It's just like that's the same kind of feel we've got going on here. It's deliberately just small sentences that we can fill in the gaps with our imagination. So yeah, Tolkien and Martin both used the same narrative approach to that, and so we experience things at a distance with a paucity of information that allows us to be concerned and worried because we do not have all the information. Okay, GTM. When John reads about dead things in the water, do you think this is pure zombie horror or more dark, mystical, dead marshes? Sort of a Lord of the Rings nod. Well, so let's pick up on the Lord of the Rings nod first, in case you don't know. You'll remember the dead marshes. Sam, Frodo, Gollum, outside Mordor, they head through this kind of marshland, and in the films then it's like you can just see that this whole the spooky bodies under the water. In the books it's just faces with sort of candlelight. If anything, it's even more spooky, less physical but more kind of ethereal. And the quote, this is what Sam says. He says, "There are dead things, dead faces in the water." So the "there are dead things in the water" is almost a direct quote. So this is George R. R. Martin doing he does little hat tips to writers that he likes every now and then, and he loves Tolkien. Again, he's continued his long tradition. He was at New York Comic Con, and I genuinely can't remember the last time he gave any kind of long form interview or Q&A and didn't mention Tolkien somewhere along the line. He did again there, and it's the man is almost as obsessed as we are. He reads Tolkien regularly. This is a definite hat tip. That doesn't mean that the same thing is going on, but it was a linguistic hat tip. So I promised I would. This is Cotter Pike's note. So he's arrived at Hardhome. He's got his maester with him. He's illiterate. He's got his maester with him. So he's like dictating to the maester what to write down, attach it to the raven, send off the raven. The raven goes to Castle Black. This is what he writes. There are dead. At Hardhome, with 6 ships, wild seas, Blackbird lost with all hands, 2 Lyseni ships driven aground on Skane, Talon taking water. Very bad here. Wildlings eating their own dead. Dead things in the woods. Bravosi captains will only take women, children on their ships. Witch women call us slavers. Attempt to take Stormcrow defeated. 6 crew dead. Many wildlings. 8 ravens left. Dead things in the water. Send help by land. Seas wrecked by storms. From Talon by hand of Maester Harmoon. So, as I say, it's just this like short sentence, bit of information. And so we are having to sort of like fill in the gaps about what's going on here. So to answer your question, when we're talking about dead things in the water, is this zombie horror or more dark mystical? I don't think we're talking the kind of the in fact, this is quite an interesting. The way you phrase that is actually almost the difference between the dead marshes in the books and the dead marshes on the TV show. Because on the TV show, on the films, because in the films it was a physical threat that Freddy was there, hands was kind of like trying to reach and grab and pull him down into the water. It was that this proper kind of zombie things, whereas in the books, as I say, it's a lot more ethereal. Don't stare too long. Don't go with it. But these are just faces, and they're very ghostly aspect. There's no hint that they're about to sort of leap out and start attacking. So which end of this are we talking here? Well, we're not giving the information, but I think everybody, when we're saying dead things in the woods, I think we are thinking about whites, ice whites. Not just humans, but maybe reanimated horses, bears, whatever. So that's what we're thinking about there, which is a sign that the others are close. And if that is the case, then we should probably apply the same logic to dead things in the water. If there are clearly dead fish that are being reanimated in some way, that would be really spooky. So yeah, I think I'm heading towards the, unless this is another aspect of the others that we're unaware of, I'm heading towards the, yes, we're talking classic zombie scares here. Question from Chaos Ballerina. Couldn't Mother Mole's vision have been a warning of slavers and she misinterpreted it? People do that all the time in A Song of Ice and Fire. Yeah, absolutely. So it's possible. And if you kind of read between the lines, there's something which is quite interesting, that she brings the people over there because she thinks there's going to be salvation. She has a vision of boats, ships coming and rescuing people. By the time Cotter Pike and then we get Arya saying, "Oh yeah, so the slavers have taken people from Hardhome." Then by the time Cotter Pike arrives, then we're told, would witches think we're slavers, or whatever the exact word, which women call us slavers. So they've got there thinking that the ships are going to save them. They've found out the ships turn up, they presumably gone, yes, save us. They turn out to be slavers. Cotter Pike, who is there to save them, turns up, and they're like, no, you're slavers. Which actually tells us a huge amount about what the mood in the camp there must be, what the mood in Hardhome must be. They've got there, they think, under false pretenses, because they thought ships were going to come and take them. I don't know, with Mother Mole, in answer to your question, whether or not her vision was a true vision and she saw Cotter Pike arriving to come and take them away, or whether it was a sort of a misinterpretation and she saw the slavers. Maybe she saw both. Maybe she wanted to think that there were people who were going to come and save them. We're not entirely sure. I agree with you completely. Misinterpreting visions is a very A Song of Ice and Fire thing. So if I had to guess, it's probably that she saw the visions of the slaver ships coming and helping people on board. And that was her misinterpreting it. And her overreaction to Cotter Pike, assuming she's the witch women, or witch woman, the witch women, there are more than one of them apparently. The overreaction to Cotter Pike, not only calling them slavers, but then trying to physically attack and take over one of the ships, suggests that they're not feeling good about this. They're feeling they have to fight their way out. John Merkel, do you buy dead things in the water as squishers? Maybe. Yeah, I think Dead Thing in the Water was George R. R. Martin doing a hat tip to J.R.R. Tolkien. I think the bit we should pay more attention to is the dead things in the woods. That's the bit I think is more plot important. As for whether this is squishers, maybe. Who knows? Let's go to Yeldenil, saying, good evening, Robert, and to you too. I hope you're well, and I wish to extend those well wishes towards Dan and the moderators. Thank you very much. What do you think are the ghostly screams that can still be heard at the site of the terrible fire? Do you think ghosts are real in the world of Ice and Fire? Okay, well, as for are ghosts real, we're in a magical world, so we can't ever say no, because George R. R. Martin, for those of us, come in towards the end of the book stories and sort of read them as a whole. I read them from beginning to end. I when I got to these books, he'd written all 5 we've got at the moment. But if you read them as new, you find each book there's new bits of magic. There's new bits about the world we didn't know about before. Things that you go, oh, that's uncertain. Not entirely sure what's going on there. So we didn't have huge amount. We got others. We got Green Dreams. We got dragons introduced in book 1. Book 2, we get shadow babies. We get House of the Undying. We get face changing assassins. There's each time we get another book, we get more added in. So I don't think we can categorically say no to ghosts. That said, they don't seem to be a big part here. The way that we understand how life and death works, Qyburn, for all his flaws, does seem to have sort of understood a few things there. Something lingers of the spirit or soul after the body dies, and that is why you can bring people back, like Beric, like Lady Stoneheart. Part of them is lost because only something lingers, but over time, the amount that's gone increases. Might there be ghosts? Well, you get things like the Undying, who are best part of the way to being ghosts. So possibly. But in terms of the what is in doing those screams, I don't think this has to be ghosts. We don't get any reports of people going up to those caves, peering in and saying, well, there's no one here except for this spooky dooky thing. That's not that they just hear and they go, well, I'm not going over there. There's something weird going on in those caves over there. So we also, incidentally, we're not told that the screams carry on now. It might have just been in the immediate aftermath. But we've not had a POV from there. We've just had a few reports back from there, so we don't know what the situation is right now. The implication from Melisandre's vision is that people had set up home there. There are fires burning in those caves, which seems to imply that the wildlings who went over to Hardhome, they made homes in those caves, which makes sense because Hardhome is not a city, it's just rubble on the ground. So if you want some shelter, then you would go into the caves which are there. And so you would probably infer from that they weren't hugely scary. They weren't like people shrieking all the time in those caves. So probably the shrieks and screams stopped at some point. As for what they are, one theory, which I don't think anyone's asked about, but I quite like as to what might have happened. Again, this is building from silence. We don't know. We do know that the wildlings are very, very, very strong on grayscale. Val comes out and basically says that she thinks that Shireen should be killed. She's way stronger on this kind of thing than even Melisandre at the moment. She says it openly to Jon as that grayscale. You might think it's in remission, it's stopped, whatever. It's just sleeping. It's going to come back, and then it's going to kill all of us. We need to get rid of her. Now, if you take that, idea and say, so the wildlings hate this. Why do they hate this? Is there some great cultural memory here? What if, and again, this is just built on what if there was an outbreak in Hardhome? We're told that outbreaks of grayscale are more likely to happen in places which are wet or moist and cold. A very, very northern port town would be those things. So this is like the place, if anywhere it's going to catch, it's going to be there. And then what if they decided we're just going to burn the survival? It spread so fast that they decided they had to burn the whole place down. That, as I say, it's based on not huge amounts of evidence, but other than kind of anecdotal bits here, that works. The tie-in to the screams is if we're saying this isn't like ghosts or the echoes of what happened or anything like that. If this is actual survivors, what we know is that the stone men, the word we hear is wail. That's what Tyrion, when he's going through the sorrows, when Tyrion is there, the stone men, those who had grayscale so bad that it's turning them almost all into statues, they wail. What if the stone men who survived stayed in those caves and it's their wails that we can hear? It ties in. We don't have enough evidence to say that's definitely what happened. We've not got anyone who said, oh, yes, there once was this terrible outbreak at Hardhome and we had to deal with it. We've not had that bit of information, but the rest of it kind of works for me. Let's go to Sir Friend. Oh, Andrew K saying that wouldn't leave a 6-month ash cloud, in my opinion, a grayscale fire purge. Quite possibly. So what I'm saying is that I don't think any of these theories 100% fit, and um, so on any of them, I think you can pick holes in them, and I think you're picking that hole. I think that's the right hole to pick on this one. It does fit a whole load of these other things. Perhaps you could make up a way that it was decided that the only way to do this was just to blow the whole city up, and so some intrepid wildlings just created some massive explosion from whatever their equivalent of gunpowder is that blew everything up. Maybe you can come up with some kind of workaround, but the big issue is we simply don't have the information that is that is the case. We just know that the wildlings are very, very scared of grayscale. It does seem like a place that grayscale might happen, and the shrieks do kind of match up with the wails of grayscale victims, and that's it. Paris Ballerina. If the others pile up enough dead things in the water, could they then pass over the said water? Could that be what they're trying to do there? I like the thinking, but this is a deep water harbour, so the you'd have to pile up a lot. It's got to, and when we're talking a deep water harbour, that means like a proper deep sea vessel with a huge amount of draft underwater can come almost right up to the docks, perhaps. That would require a huge amount of stuff, dead things in the water just to build up to the top. And if they were going to do that, surely they'd do it in a place where they could go around the wall rather than a few hundred miles north of that. So I like your thinking. I don't think that's what they're doing there. Let's go to a question from Sir Friend. Happy Thursday, Robert, and to you too. How do you think the others' inevitable attack on Hardhome will time in their invasion? Being the biggest single gathering of wildlings, do you think that once it has been hit, the others will essentially head straight for the wall? Bonus question, what are your thoughts for a non-meta reason for the others taking so long? They haven't made a huge amount of progress since the start of the story, despite a limited amount of resistance. Best wishes, warmest regards, and same to you. So, will they head straight for the wall? Maybe. So, the first or the second part of it, why is it taking them so long? I think we have to just remember that the north of the wall is huge, really, really big, and it takes Bran and Co. basically a book to walk from the wall up to Bloodraven's cave, and they were trying to pretty much head straight there. The others seem to be moving around, trying to cover the whole ground, trying to clear out all humans, sort of like moving south, clearing out all of the humans as they go. And you have to remember, I think, that this is 2 to 3 years of this story so far. So from that first encounter in the prologue, then we're only like 2 or 3 years in. So yes, this is slow progress. If you just had an army heading south, they would have reached there well before that, absolutely. But that's not what they're wanting to do. If you get your head into this idea of how does the Army of the Dead work, I'm calling them the Army of the Dead not just because that's what they said on the TV show, but because we don't know how many others there are, but the army is of the dead, which means they need to be killing people in order to be raising them as whites, which in order to be adding to their army. So they're not actually wanting to go as quickly as they can south. What they're wanting to do is get everybody that they can, clear out all of the north. Because if they kill 5,000 wildlings, then they get 5,000 ice whites out of it, which means that their army is 5,000 bigger as they're heading south. So it actually makes, if they think, oh, these guys can't stop us, there's time isn't really the issue. How big they can get their army is the issue. So that is my understanding of why they're taking as long as they are. In terms of, are they going to head south straight to the wall? Quite possibly. So the timing of the next book could well take place over maybe even a year. So we don't know exactly, but the bit of plot that we can probably best map out or guess is actually Dany's. And Dany starts off in the Dothraki Sea. She's got to go from there. They'll take her up to Vace Dothrak. Whatever happens with the Dothraki, we think she's going to get them onto her side. Then she's got to head back down to Meereen. Then she's got to defeat whatever enemies that she needs to defeat when she gets there. Then she's got to gather all her forces into the boats. The boats have got to be sailing. This is several months' journey all the way around, probably stopping off at various places, dealing with threats along the way. She's got business with Volantis. She's potentially got business in Pentos. There's a lot of different places that she may well have to stop off at, and before finally arriving at, say, Dragonstone. How long will that take? Well, your guess is as good as mine, but if it's less than 6 months, I'd be very surprised. So we're looking at maybe up to a year for this next book. We don't know. This is based on anything other than a sort of an understanding of what would probably be quite cool. My understanding is that others will probably hit the wall, reach the wall about the end of the book. So probably Hardhome is going to happen at some point in the opening quarter or third of the book. Then that leaves them with a period of everybody's scared, but we don't know exactly what they're doing when they're heading south, slowly heading south. And if they end up at Eastwatch, that kind of ties in. So yes, that sort of works. And why Eastwatch? Well, Eastwatch was where on the TV show they broke through the wall, and that seemed like quite a random choice then, other than its direct route down from Hardhome, and perhaps George R. R. Martin had said to them, the others will come down to the wall at Eastwatch. It's possible. Let's go to a question from Taylor Jones. Saying, hello, Robert. Do you think the mystery of the destruction of Hardhome is meant to and will be answered as part of the story, or is it just world building? A historic mystery fleshing out the world that we won't get an answer to. Halloween side thought. Maybe the haunted forest got its name after the destruction of Hardhome rained ashes over it. Maybe it's haunted with ghosts of the victims. Spooky. That wasn't just me saying spooky. Taylor wrote that. So in terms of the haunted forest was called the haunted forest by the Night's Watchman. So they named it that. There's no indication that this was after Hardhome, as if they've called it that for a very long time. It does seem to be just a sort of a generic kind of nod to particularly kind of mid-European folklore, where the forest that's the dark place. That's where the bad things are. If you read any of like the Grimm's fairy tales, so much of it, the forest that's the unknown, and it is haunted because you don't know what's out there. There's mysterious sounds. There's things rustling over the bushes. So that is the kind of feel we've got here. The forest is the danger, which incidentally, if you reread the prologue and think of the forest as being the danger, and then the others emerge out of it, that kind of fits with that idea. So I like the thinking, but there's no indication that the Night's Watchmen think it's actually got ghosts in it, and there's no indication it was named after what happened at Hardhome. The first part of your question, will it actually be answered? What happened with the explosion? Not necessarily. I think the answer, I think it's only going to be answered if it is relevant to the main plot. I don't think we're just going to get, and Sam was just reading along and he found some ancient text with a confession from somebody saying, "Hi, I blew up Hardhome yesterday, signed whatever." That I don't think we're going to get that. If this was in some way related to the others, the main story, then yeah, maybe we will get some kind of clue as to what happened. Maybe if this was the grayscale thing, as I say, it's the theory which works best for me. I don't think it's perfect. It's the best working theory I've got at the moment. That this was trying to destroy a place riddled with grayscale. If it was that, then that's the kind of thing that probably some wildling somewhere will have some cultural memory of. And so it's entirely possible that when they're talking about Hardhome, somebody might just sort of drop in, "Oh yeah, do you remember when Hardhome used to have a whole load of stone men," or something like that. So that's the only way that we might get it dropped in, if it's sort of peripheral to the main story. I have to say, I want to say it's 50-50. It's more like, I think it's more likely, sorry, but I think it's more likely that George R. R. Martin won't reveal in the main story what happened 600 years ago at Hardhome. He might give us some hints in the same way that with the Doom of Valyria, we've got some hints, and there I think I did a video on it if you're interested, but I think that we're in a position where we can start to say, I can be reasonably confident I know what happened there. I don't think we're yet in that position with Hardhome. Cuban Missile Dino Crisis saying, "Hey Robert, I've been listening to your stuff for years and I'm excited to see you taking off." Well, thank you. I hugely appreciate it. I love the A Song of Ice and Fire series so much that I wrote a couple of songs inspired by it for my band. Anyway, here's some money. Well, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Put the name of your band in the chat, and I'll happily give them a shout out. Wrote a couple of songs about A Song of Ice and Fire for the band. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the kind of thing. I don't know if you've ever gone down the rabbit hole about Lord of the Rings in sort of music, particularly Led Zeppelin. So there's lots of Led Zeppelin. Q now the chat will come out with a whole load of Led Zeppelin lyrics, which are very Lord of the Ringsy. But it's not just them. There are plenty of others. Cuban Missile Dino Crisis saying Slag is my band. Great name. So let's go to Orion's Orcas saying, "Hi Robert, in your opinion, is this a smaller repeat of what happened 600 years ago or something leading to a bigger event since the dragons are back in Westeros?" So I don't know, when you say 600 years ago, so the Hardhome was 600 years ago, the Doom was 400 years ago. I think you're talking about the Doom, because people have pointed out quite rightly that the only near comparable thing we've got is the Doom of Valyria. A big explosion, lots of destruction, and the kind of the detail of ash falling for a long time afterwards. They do appear to be different, though, in terms of the Doom of Valyria. It clearly came from underground, clearly came from the volcanoes, and entire sort of promontory, a massive area of land just got blown up and now becomes sea. That's not what's happened at Hardhome. It's just as far as we can tell, again, we've not been there, so we don't have all the details, but it was just like charred rubble and things on the surface. We're not told of there being a big explosion up and out. So I personally don't think this is the same. There are some similarities, but I don't think it's the same as that. You also talk about the dragons. People, let's tackle this one here for now. I can't remember whether I've got a question on this later. If I have, then let's take this as the answer now. People wonder whether, some people speculate, is this dragons? This is clearly very hot fire in some way. Could this be the dragons? At the time that Valeria was at its height. And there is a working theory that, again, makes some kind of sense. Valeria, the Valerian freehold, ruled over huge swathes of Essos, and not many people could stand in their way. But there was a small slaves' revolt at one point, a few hundred years ago. Some slaves captured the ships that they were on and then piloted those ships up the coast of Essos and founded a new city of freed slaves, which became Braavos. Braavos was first known as the Secret City because they did not announce themselves to the world. The rumors that the trading ships came out from Braavos. There were rumors of this emerging city. That it was made very clear that these are anti-slavery people. This was the first law of Braavos: is there shall be no slaves, and the Valerians kept slaves, so they then immediately placed them at odds. And this was a personal snub, insult, that these were their slaves that escaped and founded this city. So the logic goes that the Valerians were desperately trying to find where this secret city was. And maybe you would have to say that anybody who wished to try and figure this out, given the fact that, yes, they were keeping where Braavos was a secret, ships going to and fro, you can tell a little bit here and there. Okay, so you left Pentos, and we know that you're a Braavosi ship, and then you headed north. So where might you be going? You can start to narrow down the bit of the map where this might be. What if, the theory goes, what if the Valerians, maybe not even all of them, maybe just one or two of them, heard about some free folk who founded a city on the coast, and what if they thought, and it's somewhere up north, that sounds quite similar to what this secret city might be. And so they go there, they fly their dragons there, and then they just burn it to the ground. That's a theory. Again, I think it answers some of these questions. I think that it doesn't quite seem to answer, as hot as Dragonflame can be, for the ash to be coming down and for the flames to be reaching so high, that would seem to imply, I think, more than just Dragonflame from above. But also, we have to face this idea that the wall is not, the wall is not just a physical barrier. It's also a magical barrier. Now, we do not know. So this is just speculation, but we do know that when Queen Alison was at the wall with her dragon Silverwing, she could not cross the wall on her dragon, and the accepted wisdom there is that this was because there's a magical barrier that she couldn't get across, and dragons are magical beings. The people wonder whether at Eastwatch comes to the sea and the physical barrier stops, but does the magical barrier carry on? It's possible. If it does, then dragons can't get up to Hardhome. If it doesn't, then yes, they can just sort of fly around outside the wall. So it's an interesting idea. It wasn't quite where you were going with your question, but I thought it was a chance to drop in that one there. Also, a number of people I think I've spotted in the chat, a number of people saying sounds like wildfire. Yeah, in many ways, again, this is the answer we always give. In many ways, it does. Wildfire is incredibly hot. The flame is shooting hugely high in the sky. Yes, that does make a whole lot of sense. That doesn't answer why. Why is there so much wildfire going on there? But also, wildfire's green, and what we're told is that Night's Watch thought it was like the sun was rising in the north. Surely they would have said it was like a green sun rising in the north. So I don't think it's wildfire. Might have been. There might have been some, but I don't think so. Um, uh, oh, we got some lyrics going. Up in the land of the ice and snow, in the darkest depths of Mordor, I met a girl so fair. But Gollum and the evil worm snuck off and ran away with her. Yeah, so there's lots of this is the Led Zeppelin lyrics. Good stuff going on there. Okay, let's go to a question from AD Ross saying, "Good evening, Sir Robert. I hope you and Dan are well." We are, thank you. I seem to recall hearing a couple of theories from other creators. Frustratingly, I can't remember whom. Shout out to the other creators if when I get to what the theories are, then and you know which creators have done them. Happy to give them a shout out. Put it in the chat. That the Valyrians were involved in the devastation of a Hardhome. Do you give these ideas any credence? Do you have any notion where these theories came from? It seems like an odd connection to me. I think I've just answered that one. I do sometimes do this. I answer in the previous question. I answer the. So yeah. The logic there, just very briefly again, the logic there is that they might have been looking for Bravos and mistaken Hardhome, a new city of free folk, for Bravos somewhere in the north, and burned it down. So that's the logic. We don't have any corroborative evidence from the sort of the Valyrian side. We don't hear any point that a story that's saying that they thought that they'd discovered this secret city, they burned it down, but turns out they'd made a mistake. Nor do we see any reports of dragons flying there, which would also be a bit of a giveaway. And let's go to AD Ross. I similarly recall a second question. I similarly recall hearing some other theories from other YouTubers, saying that the Maesters were involved, which makes a little more sense given the presence of Maester Willis not long before the event. But do you think this might also just be a case of accusing culprits at random, or is there something more here? So Maester Willis is an interesting character. I'll read out. I've got the whole section about him. So this is not a long section. In the world of Ice and Fire. A most fascinating account of Hardhome can be found in Maester Willis's Hardhome, an account of 3 years spent beyond the wall among savages, raiders, and woods witches. Willis journeyed to Hardhome on a Pentoshi trader and established himself there as a healer and counsellor so that he might write of their customs. He was given the protection of Gorm the Wolf, a chieftain who shared control of Hardhome with 3 other chiefs. When Gorm was murdered in a drunken brawl, however, Willis found himself in mortal danger and made his way back to Old Town. There he set down his account, only to vanish the year after the illuminations were done. It was said in the Citadel that he was last seen at the docks looking for a ship that would take him to Eastwatch by the sea. So that's the Maester Willis connection. So there was a Maester in Hardhome. Can we blame him for it? Possibly, but again, I think that the sort of the evidence and the motivation seem a little bit lacking here. We don't know when Maester Willis was there. That's the first fact. Maybe the timing is right. Maybe the timing is not right. We simply don't know. The Maesters, would they have said, and the very next year, Hardhome blew up. That would have been seen as hinting too heavily. Perhaps he was involved, and they wouldn't want to. Question as to what the motivation might be. Is it because he got chased? He found himself, what was the phrasing? He found himself in mortal danger and made his way back down to Old Town. So is that enough to destroy an entire city? Because some people, presumably because they knew that he'd been associate of this Gorm, wanted him dead, would he go up and literally kill the thousands, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people there? That certainly feels like an overreaction to me. If he'd discovered some horrendous thing which meant that he had to destroy the entire city for whatever reason, would he really have gone all the way down to Old Town, spent a long time writing a book, getting it illuminated, and then waiting a year and then heading back up again? No, if this was important and urgent, he wouldn't have spent the probably time writing a book and illuminations, then waiting a year, then travel time there and back. That's at least 3 years. So would he have spent that long? That for something urgent feels unlikely. So there's a sort of a slight information gap here, and I think the other thing is that it's not as suspicious, although the Maesters make it sound suspicious. He was last seen trying to get back up to Eastwatch. Yeah, maybe he was just heading back up there. That doesn't mean he blew the place up. Maybe he really enjoyed it and wanted to go back. Or maybe he was going to go and investigate other places. So this is something, just a bit of a digression, but this is something when you actually start to dig into the world, you'll find that it isn't necessarily obvious when you're just reading the main story. When you're reading the main story, you think Maesters, Maesters, they get their chains and then they go out and serve some noble family somewhere. Yes, that is one of the career paths for Maesters. But there's also the teaching career path and the administration career path in the Citadel. And there's also the lifelong academic researcher career path. And in that, Maesters travel the world. They're particularly sort of dotted through the world of Ice and Fire. We just get these random references to Maesters popping up in different places. We get this Maester Willis up in Hardhome, but we also hear Maesters regularly went over to Old Valyria before the Doom. We hear of a Maester who went to, I think it was Norvos, and was sort of chased out of the city. Maester or Marwyn the Mage, Archmaester Marwyn went over to Ashai. So this is actually quite a common thing for Maesters to sort of go off around the world, do their research, and then come back, write a book, and then go off and do it again. So we don't know anything about this Maester Willis, but if he's the kind of person who just decided to head up to north of the wall to all of these wildlings and live there for 3 years to do a research project, the idea that after a while he got bored in Old Town and headed off to do something else doesn't really surprise me. So yeah, so it's a nice theory. You also have to wonder if this was him. It's hard to see a motive that justifies destroying an entire city. If it's the Maesters, why would they? And they're trying to hide this. Why would they add in the line, he was last seen heading back up to Eastwatch, because that might incriminate the Maesters. So, and again, what could they possibly be wanting there? If anything, you'd think that the uh, civilizing impact, if that's the right phrase, of having a city among the wildlings would be part of the world that they're wanting to introduce, because this is the kind of thing that they like. They don't like magic. They want sort of logic and reason to be ruling. So why they probably wouldn't want to be destroying it. Um, let's go to Randomir Meech. Oh, that was actually, sorry, that was the last question I've got from my patrons about Hardhome specifically. I've got a few more questions that I will be answering, but in terms of Hardhome, that's it. I'll have a quick flick through the chat, see whether there's any more Hardhome specific. Um, James Townley, it's not Hardhome specific. James Townley saying, I love the idea of a Maester careers advisor. Yeah, it's great. I don't think they did have that. I think that they allowed them to do their own thing. But yeah, that's a nice idea. Urias Tosh saying you really can't trust the Maesters. Absolutely. Efren T saying maybe Hardhome is volcanic and went Krakatoa. Quite possibly. But as I say, we don't get any um, uh, descriptions of like the ground being all erupted. It's just charred rubble and charred bodies. So it doesn't feel like something erupted from underneath. And um, it's just Andrew Kay saying it's just another breadcrumb. George R. Martin leaving for us to head in so many directions with Hardhome, very deliberately so from George R. Martin. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Avatar saying, hey, the first time I've caught a stream, love your videos. Well, thank you very much and welcome. Do please get involved in the chat. There's some fantastic people in the chat who I'm sure will say hello to you. Um, Andrew Kay saying gas vents in the cliff caves works a lot for me. Obviously, they could ignite in a massive way and in real life known to make eerie sounds in cave systems. Yeah, nice idea. So if they're in the cave systems, then gas vents, and if they caught fire, perhaps, and then whoosh, I don't know. I think I'd need to be a better scientist than I am to know to be able to talk intelligently on that one. But yeah, that sounds like a nice idea. And Amber saying in George R. Martin's 2004 A Feast for Crows outline, John's story and the book was supposed to end at Hardhome. Do you think that means anything for the significance of the town? Um, I think I'd have to have a proper looking at that, but I think the short answer is no. This is north of the wall. If you're going to have like a focus of something north of the wall, you're not going to have it for like here's hope, here's the future. It's not going to be Craster's Keep. It's not going to be just like White Tree because it's teeny tiny. Fist of the First Men is very far north, and is very much a kind of a defensive structure. Bloodraven's Cave, hopefully at the end of the story, isn't going to be as important. So really, you're looking at Hardhome as being this focus. If you're going to say where are we going to repopulate the north from, Hardhome's a good place to stop. Let's go to. So I've got some questions, as I say, not specifically about Hardhome, but about other things. Two questions. This is Randomir Mitra about my latest video. Is the Night's King a Stark? Yes. So that's sort of ending the series on the Starks, Winterfell crypts, and things like that. It was quite a long series, not in terms of the number of videos necessarily, but the time it took me to do it. I do appreciate, so I apologize for that. What I'll probably do, which I did for a series I did, a Lord of the Rings series about the War of the Ring, is I put them into a compilation video. So all of the ones in that kind of series, I just stitched them together, tried to edit it so that it was it made some kind of logical sense. So I will stitch all of those together, I think, and put that up as a compilation at some point in the next couple of weeks. I'm doing that actually. I'm doing that also for the Varys, Illyrio, and Young Griff series that I did, which I've sort of also relatively recently finished off. That had 8 or 9 videos in that, so I put that there. That will appear in a couple of weeks. Some people said when I did the previous one, they really liked that, so I will do that one again. Harshmellow79 saying, love your content. Thank you. Do you think the children of the forest were behind the destruction of Hardhome? Are they taking revenge for man encroaching on the last remaining lands they have? Robert's voice is greater than Morgan Freeman. I mean, that's very kind of you to say, but no. Might the children of the forest be behind it? Are they taking revenge for man encroaching on the last remaining lands that they have? Well, I think probably no. Partly because humanity encroaching on their lands at this point in the story, the children of the forest have been gone for a very long time, and their lands are not the bits by the sea near sort of cities bases. They're in forests, they're in hollow hills. Yes, there's sort of cave systems and the like in Hardhome, but humanity did humanity kick the children of the forest out there, and the children of the forest decide to take revenge? Doesn't feel like them, and also they're not fire people. They really don't like fire. Fire burns weirwood trees. So they yes, occasionally you see, so you get like the small sort of pine cone fireballs up outside Bloodraven's cave, but broadly speaking, massive fire is not their real strength. So I think by this point they're more concerned about the others returning than humans. The wildlings were there, and they had been there all that time. Would they be particularly concerned about a sort of worldling city developing on sort of off on the coast? I don't think so much that they'd try and kill everyone, personally. Let's go. Question from. Oh, actually, I got distracted. I was started talking about Ranabir Mitra's question. I do apologise. You were talking about my "Is the Night's King a Stark" series, and then I started talking about doing compilation videos, and then I went off and look at the chat. So Ranabir, I apologise. Let's come back to your question. You mentioned that the original Winterfell was the Weirwood and the Crypts, but I wish to suggest a slight change. The original Winterfell is just that weirwood and the deep pond beside it, such that when Bran sees that sacrifice in his visions, the white-haired woman with the bronze sickle, we're actually seeing the first potential crypt resident in what later becomes the crypts of Winterfell. What do you think? Yeah, I think it's quite possible. So the are two bits here just to pick up on, in case you didn't get this thought. Winterfell itself, we think of it as the castle. It's very clear that the castle was not just built as a whole, it was built up over time. So this bit over here is a few hundred years old, that bit's 1,000, that bit's 3,000 years old. You have to ask, what's the very first bit of Winterfell? And that seems to be the weirwood tree and the crypts. The crypts seem to have been there almost since the beginning, if not actually since the beginning. The weirwood tree seems to have always been there. So that is the original, maybe a tower on the top as well, but that's the original Winterfell. So the second part of your question about that vision of the sacrifice. This is when Bran starts getting he starts to see through the weirwood tree in Winterfell, and he gets these visions. He's not in control of them, but it seems to be going back through time. So he starts off, he sees his father. Then he sees Leanna and Benjen, his aunt and uncle, playing there a number of years ago. And then he sees what looks like Old Man as a young woman, and Dunk. And these visions, they go back in time, back in time, back in time. And then we get this bit where it's just like, and then they go kind of like flipped past him. And it was just like a whole load of these old Northerners. And then it kind of stops at this point where we get this image of a woman with a sickle, and they're making a blood sacrifice to the weirwood tree. And the sacrifice appears to be called Brandon. Now, might that be the original person to be buried in Winterfell crypts? Well, quite possibly. But because that vision there it seems important, because this isn't something with any particular connection to Bran other than the name Brandon. And it's as far back in time as you seem to be able to go. So yes, the idea that that was the first sacrifice makes sense. And the idea that the sacrifice is the first Stark put in the crypts also makes sense. So yeah, I think I like it. Rabbi Mitra saying, I concluded in that video that it doesn't matter which Brandon Stark it was that got sacrificed, because what's more important is that a Stark got sacrificed and his entire generational bloodline got tied to the crypts. I 100% agree, but think this conclusion can get amplified even more. If this Brandon Stark is actually Bran the Builder, who later became the Night's King, such that his evil deeds result in this sacrifice and the potential cursing of his entire bloodline, wouldn't the cursing of the entire Stark bloodline only be possible if all subsequent Starks descended from the Night's King? What do you think? Okay, so for those who have not watched that video, what I pointed out, or what I started by pointing out, was that the Starks, yes, they're tied into Winterfell. We know this. We know, we get the sayings, there must always be a Stark at Winterfell. There seems to be some kind of magical impact when there isn't a Stark at Winterfell. And the crypts are there for all of the Starks. They start at the bottom and work their way up, seem to imply that whoever set this system up knew that this was going to be carrying on for a long time, that every Stark would be there for a very long, buried there for a long time. The spirits of the Starks seem to be taken down into the crypts, and they seem to be bound there. They are restless. They are vengeful. They're not voluntarily there. They're being held there. And that, when you sort of add all of those facts, that turns what's going on there from this is the Starks being honoured, they're always supposed to be ruling the land, they're great, to this feels like they're, I don't know, being punished, paying off a debt, something along those lines. That the deal is that something happened which meant that the Starks now, every generation of Starks, their spirits get bound down there so that they can come back. If you buy with me this idea that the statues are going to come to life, because George R. R. Martin has flagged that up so much, that for thousands of years, the Starks have been bound there in order to, at some point, come out and help save humanity, presumably against the others, which seems to imply that there was something perhaps that they did wrong. I tied that in with the Night's King, with this idea that perhaps the Night's King was a Stark. Is that this original sin of the Starks? Is it that and we shouldn't take the Night's King legend literally? George R. R. Martin says this a lot. His legends are legends. They're not intended to be literal truth of what happened. These are stories which is passed down from generation to generation, which are changed generation to generation. So we probably should just kind of take the feel of them, which is that there's a Stark, head of the Night's Watch, who does a terrible thing, probably connected to the others. That, for me, seems to kind of tie in. So does the magic need the first person there to be the antecedent of all the Starks that followed. I mean, it makes sense, but we don't know the deal of the magic. I mean, there are plenty of times when the Stark line doesn't just go down father, son, father, son, father, son. It sort of like jumps across to a brother and then down, or something along those lines. So there's without knowing the details of that original magical pact of some kind, and there has to have been one. Some powerful magic had to have been wrought in order to bind the Stark spirits there. Without knowing what the wording was, I think we can't answer that question, I'm afraid. So in terms of powerful magic, just the last point on this, in terms of powerful magic, it had to have been very powerful magic, because you're not just binding a person's spirit, you're binding thousands of years worth of spirits against their will in a place, which will have required definitely some huge sacrifice. Let's go to Yeldenil. So I've got a couple of questions here, Lord of the Rings questions actually, about the Witch King. I did a live stream about the Witch King Vangmar last week. So Yeldenil saying about my question last week, I didn't mean witches in the sense of female magic users, but in the sense of magical or medicine men or women accused of having made a deal with the devil. I suppose Sauron would be an equivalent of the devil, so in that way I could see witches as a concept in Middle-earth. But would they be persecuted as they were in our world? And lastly, I'm currently going through some of your well-told tales, and I must compliment you for Mr. Toad's singing voice. I really like that one. Yeah, so, well, thank you, firstly. If you don't know, I have another channel called The Well-Told Tale, where I narrate what I consider to be the best science fiction and fantasy stories ever. So that was The Wind in the Willows that you're talking about there. We're currently working our way through The War of the Worlds. I think I've got one more episode to go, and then we've got a short story, and then we'll go on to Frankenstein. So if you're interested in that, do go and check that out. But in terms of your first thing, the question I think that the question you're asking was, is there a concept of witches in Middle-earth? And I think the answer is yes, in as much as we get a couple of people. Galadriel, for example, is called, I think, the Witch of Lorien at one point. And if you go back into like the Silmarillion, I think we get a couple of mentions of people who are called witches. We obviously also have the Witch King. So yes, the implication is this word witch is definitely there as a user of evil magic of some kind. Not necessarily exactly the same as ours. One thing I would say, Tolkien, he wrote this. He thought a lot about magic and what magic actually was and how it worked. And we often just sort of almost dismiss it by saying he had a very soft magic system. He did, in as much as he didn't give us the in order to cast this spell you need this, this, and this. But he thought very deeply about what magic was. And in one letter, he says this: I have not used magic consistently. And indeed, the elven queen Galadriel is obliged to remonstrate with the hobbits on their confused use of the word, both for the devices and operations of the enemy and for those of the elves. I have not, because there is not a word for the latter, since all human stories have suffered the same confusion. But the elves are there to demonstrate the difference. Their magic is art, and its object is art, not power. Subcreation, not domination, and tyrannous reforming of creation. So, as far as Tolkien is concerned, there's the words we use about magic that they're not quite right, because for his creation. So we had magic user, sorcerer, wizard, witch, whatever. Is that he says these are used and we use them, and they are used within his created world in a pretty non-exact way, just as someone who does stuff that you don't necessarily understand exactly how it is. The elf magic is not like that. It is working in tune with nature. It is uh, I mean, the way he talks about, sub-creation, not domination. Its object is art, not power. So for him, that's different to the magic that Sauron might use to be giving the Witch King a demonic boost or something like that. He thinks they're different, but our language and in world, the language was just calling it magic. So it's very easy when you're dealing with the professor to just sort of like go down this incredibly kind of erudite and quite long-winded discussion about the meanings of exact words, because he clearly loved discussing the meanings of different words. But I think the headline here is the word witch was definitely in use in Middle-earth. It was tended to be used as a kind of a derogatory term, as far as we can tell, for generally evil, often female magic users. However, that is not, it is a different type of magic. The evil magic is a different type of magic to the sort of the more elven magic. So the words are not precise enough for Tolkien. And another question about that. This is Jeremy Grove saying, I have a few questions regarding the Witch King from the last live stream. I came up with these way too late. Hello, long-time fan, first-time commenter. Well, welcome. Great to see you. The Witch King, we know quite little about him, but was he always a witch or sorcerer and a king, or did he just become those things after becoming a wraith? Did he make his crown himself? Did Sauron make it for him? Well, we don't know about his crown, but if he was the Witch King of Angmar in the early to mid part of the Third Age, and so one assumes he had a crown at that point. And Sauron was sort of hovering in Dol Guldur, so it kind of works, fits with his character that he makes his own crown. He's like, I'm a king now. Boom. So almost certainly he wasn't a king before. Very probably he was from Numenor. Very probably he was some user of magic arts in some way, whose power was boosted by having a ring of power. And so when in the Third Age he kind of resurfaces and is branded as the Witch King of Angmar, then he is still a magic user. He's now a king. Secondly, did he have a staff? Could he even have had one, or did he lack the authority to have such a thing? I did a video about Gandalf's staff recently, if you're interested in the intricacies of that. So the staff as an item, sort of wizardware, in Tolkien's world, that was very much attached to the Astari as a symbol of their authority. They were there with the authority of the Valar, as emissaries of the Valar. Now, the Witch King clearly couldn't have that kind of staff. He could have had a staff if he wanted to, and he could surely have used it in a magical kind of way. But the point about the staff was that this is a walking stick, because the Istari, Gandalf, Saruman, etc., they came in the guise as old men for good reasons, and so they had these sticks because old men had to have sticks to be getting around with, and so that was what that's what it was. And it was only later that the staff started becoming associated with this idea of wizard. And then third, you say, when someone is stabbed with the Morgul blade and is turned into a wraith, do they become a minion of the Witch King, something akin to the Barrow-wights? Do we know anything like this from the histories? Well, yes. So we're not told about details of things when this has happened in the past, but yes, the clear implication is when the Witch King stabs Frodo, the end comes off, it's burrowing its way into his heart. He would become a wraith. When it got to his heart, he would become a wraith, and that wraith would be under the control of the Witch King. So yes, that's what it was. Willie Biggs 2000. Beric Dondarrion died 6 times, but did he change that much? Yeah, he did. I mean, he has this really quite sad talk, I think, with Thoros, when he talks about the things he's lost. And so the sort of the normal undead things in A Song of Ice and Fire. So he doesn't really eat, he doesn't really sleep, but he says he forgets the name of his fiancée, his betrothed, and then he forgets her face, and then he forgets other things. What seems to linger for him is his mission, his heart for doing what he is supposed to be doing. But all the other aspects of what made him him, those things he loses. Shakti Raman, thanks Robert for all the videos, but mainly for helping me unwind and go to sleep when I have severe migraines. I get why the mountain was always grumpy. Well, you're very welcome. And does give me a chance just to give a plug for In Deep Sleep. If you've not come across this before, lots of people have said they fall asleep to these videos. Maybe you've already fallen asleep to this one, who knows? But lots of people tell me they do fall asleep to these videos, to the videos on my main channel. I've decided to lean into it. I've decided to embrace this. I take this as a compliment. And so I've set up a channel which just has my audio, and over the top I try and put some rather than my face, then some kind of soothing image like a crackling log fire or something, with the audio, the crackling logs, and then I do this live stream, and this live stream will be itself appearing in a few weeks' time over there on In Deep Sleep. And then when I finish talking, then it kind of fades to black and we just get the sound going. So the video then carries on for a full 8 hours. So the idea is that you can just fall asleep and you don't have to worry. There's no adverts in the middle. There might be some at the beginning or end, but once you're into the video, no adverts, and it just hopefully people will be able to use that to go to sleep. So that's intended from me as a way to help people. If you want to just watch these main videos, of course, you're more than welcome. But if you want that, do go and check that out. Right, that's all the questions from my patrons. Let's have a quick flick through the chat. Kalnitsky saying, I feel for the mountain too, but only to a certain point. Agreed. Wheezy Squeeze Box saying not sleeping yet. Yeah, hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. Sleep is good. And Urias Tosh saying Saruman's didn't look like no walking stick, more like a whooping stick. Well, yeah. So they clearly weren't just a walking stick, but that was the idea to start with. They were old men. And Urias Tosh saying magic is just science for the ignorant. Even in magic stories, no matter how big or little the magic, it's usually learned and follows a system of education and use. Tony Gabagul, probably mispronounced that, apologies, saying second live stream ever, welcome. Saying love IDG and the amazing community. Started listening to the channel and it inspired me to rewatch the series and then read A Song of Ice and Fire. Just read Fire and Blood and Dunk and Egg. Oh, you've made my day. Thank you very much. That makes me very happy when I can help inspire people to be reading the books. Okay. Right. I think with that, what I shall do is just sort of say, what have I got coming out video? If I can do it, I did a video. I tried to time. I always forget doing topical videos, but on the main channel, I'm going to try and get was Sauron really a necromancer video out for tomorrow for Halloween? And I've got a couple more Witcher videos coming out soon. I've done one back in, so actually, as of the time of recording this, the new Witcher season 4 is out today. So I will watch that, and I'll let people know what I think about that. But I did a video on the new Witcher book, which will be coming out very soon, Crossroads of Ravens, and I've also done, and it will come out probably in 2 or 3 weeks' time, another Witcher video about, if you've ever wondered what is going on between Geralt, Yennefer, and Triss. I've just broken it down, so just to explain what's going on there. But other than that, we will be going back to the normal Lord of the Rings and Song of Ice and Fire videos, and hopefully I'll be able to get some shorts back up. I took a little break from doing some shorts, but that will be coming back up. What do I need to do? I've already thanked patrons. I've already thanked moderators. Send a bit more love to the moderators if you're there in the chat. But we will be back next week. Haven't decided what to do yet. Let me know down in the comments what you think. So yeah, I'll pick something, probably another one in the mysteries of sort of Westeros in the world of Ice and Fire. So let me know down in the comments what you think, and I will see you. Oh, if you're watching later, appearing here are going to be the other videos appearing here, linked to Patreon. But other than that, take care, everyone, and I will see you same time next week.